The Flying Scotsman is the most famous steam engine in the world, but you probably already knew that. The locomotive is a Gresley A1 Pacific and would later become a Gresley A3 Pacific and would get its name from the train that ran from King's Cross to Edinburgh, hence the Flying Scotsman's name. The locomotive was so famous because of that, it would even become the mascot of the LNER. And by 1934, Flying Scotsman would break the world speed record to be the fastest steam engine in the world. Although it's still debated if it was Flying Scotsman or City of Truro. A real question like the which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of question. Even by the 1940s, when Edward Thompson took over as chief mechanical engineer of the LNER, Flying Scotsman kept on steaming, although most other LNER engines got the short end of the stick. And here comes the modernization, and by that I mean new diesel locomotives are running on all parts of the United Kingdom's railway system, and steam locomotives, well, yeah, they got withdrawn from service, and sooner or later would be scrapped. This would also include every single LNER A3 that was ever built, including Flying Scotsman. And you might think the story ends there, but it doesn't. Around that time in the 60s, a British businessman named Alan Pegler wanted to start a campaign to save Flying Scotsman. Steam enthusiasts knew Flying Scotsman was too famous to be scrapped and wanted to save the poor locomotive too. It would be really expensive, but sooner or later, Flying Scotsman was in the hands of Alan Pegler, saved from the cutter's torch. And a while after Pegler owned Flying Scotsman, he would then come up with the idea to drive Scotsman all around the United States of America. And I think we all know what happens next. Flying Scotsman gets American features, transported on a ship, and headed straight for the USA. Side note, I, a Bay Stater, was gobsmacked after hearing that Flying Scotsman's first USA stop was Boston, Massachusetts. I could cover the whole USA or Australia tour if I wanted to, but if we did, we'd be here all day. And if you want, you can check out the Flying Scotsman's USA tour from the Unlucky Tug himself. And since we've all discussed the history of Flying Scotsman, let us look no further than the Hornby 00 scale model of the Flying Scotsman itself. It's a very special day too for Flying Scotsman. Gordon is here, steam enthusiasts, and most importantly, Flying Scotsman's 100th birthday. Okay, so what is there to say about the Hornby Flying Scotsman? It is detailed and modeled really nicely by Hornby. I love the brass nameplate, the safety valves, and everything just looks really, really accurate to the real-life engine. Yeah. Every detail, even on the front number on the buffer beam, it's really good. It didn't come with its front coupling, although it was in a separate bag and some in its packaging, so I just put it on its front coupling. So I mean, it's not like Flying Scotsman is like the push-pull engines like, you know, on heritage railways and such, but I mean, it just felt like it. The lack of detailing in the cab kind of bothers me a little, but I mean, I can see why. I'm not going to do it myself, but because this model is really, it's good enough as it is, and a really good runner too, which I will show in a moment. And I mean, I don't see anything else that I dislike from it. Scotsman is just really, really good. I mean, there's also other bits that you can put on yourself, like this hose pipe here. Yeah. It is... Hornby did a good job. And of course this model is mass-produced, but I'm not going to get as many as I'd like, or if that makes any sense, but I mean, I'm just happy with this one. I can't think of anything else to say. It has the Hornby name and brand on the bottom of the locomotive, but weirdly, no date when it was made. Now, of course, you would argue Flying Scotsman's a famous engine. What are you arguing about? Well, I mean, I'm not that there's a problem with that, but I mean, I always like to check and see what certain toys or model trains were made on what time. And the corridor tender looks really well made. I don't mind Scotsman not having the second tender because Scotsman doesn't use its second tender anymore, which I can kind of overlook. And has that there. And the back coupling, which I put on myself as well. And one thing you need to know about these Hornby engines, they have some really, really delicate parts, especially on this handrail right here. It may look broken, but it's not too noticeable, so I'm just telling you, you need to be careful with Hornby model trains. I mean, if there's anything else I don't seem to like out of the Hornby Flying Scotsman is this window on the corridor tender not fully painted or something. I'm not going to do it myself because I just don't want to touch up this thing, which I know it sounds odd since I do a lot of touch-ups on model trains, but yeah, I just want to keep it as is because of how famous Flying Scotsman is. And yeah, just Hornby model trains have really, really delicate bits, so you have to be careful with them, like this Hornby Terrier, which I got yesterday at the time I'm filming this. There's so many delicate bits that could snap off and break, so I mean, if anyone doesn't have any Hornby models on them at the moment and you really want one, just be careful with them. Okay. Now let's see how Scotsman runs. And before I do run Flying Scotsman, of course, I've got to give a credit to Hornby for these older style LNER coaches. I don't know what kind of coaches these are called, but I like them nonetheless. And I'm also using the Hornby Railer 2 that Flying Scotsman came with. It's not bad by any means, but it's not like the Bachmann Easy Railer where it has this little groove right here, so it's not a bad thing by any means, but I mean, you can kind of see where I'm coming at. This is kind of like Sam's Trains a little, just running Scotsman on the floor like this. I mean, I do have my set and stuff, but I didn't feel like bringing that out. Okay, very smooth. And you can see how smoothly Flying Scotsman ran like that. Like, I'll just back up and show you again if you didn't see it. Like, yeah, Scotsman kept going for, I wouldn't say a mile, but I quite like that feature. I didn't notice until now. It's really good, like a really realistic engine. And you might be wondering, since the Thomas fan I am I going to give Flying Scotsman a face? That's both yes and no. Because, of course, I'm not British and I don't have access to all Hornby engines out there. But, on the other hand, I did make a custom Flying Scotsman face from an old Gordon, and, I mean, it fits on just well. Yeah. I mean, this face will not be on Scotsman all of the time. Sometimes you'll see it there, sometimes you won't. But either way, with that said, it's really, really good. I mean, this isn't like the Thomas and Friends Hornby Flying Scotsman, since Those Hornby engines are really hard to find, but either way, I'm happy with this Scotsman. I don't know how many times I've said it, but yeah, even if Scotsman is mass-produced in Hornby and a low scale. So, any final thoughts I have on the Hornby Flying Scotsman? I'd give it a solid, decent 8 out of 10. Is the reason why I give it an 8 out of 10 because, well, I think one of them would probably have to be the corridor tender, and the other would be that it's, I'm not saying it's not Thomas and Friends, but I can always, do a little face to put on it at any time, since I am a Thomas fan, of course. But I don't mind this not being the Thompson Friends, and I don't think I mind this not having its second tender, but it just shows what it was like around the age of steam. It shows you what the era of preservation looks like for British railways. It shows you how one locomotive became famous around the world and broke the world's speed record. Well, still debated, that is. But even with that said, I'm still willing to grow my collection of British engines. There is a lot more British stuff I want to collect and make sure I put in my hands and treat with care. And what other British locomotive could you have in your collection other than Flying Scotsman, the most famous steam engine in the UK, if not the world? Went to places like the USA and Australia, made an appearance in Thomas the Tank Engine, where everyone who loved trains pretty much grew up liking trains. There's a lot more Flying Scotsman has done over the years, and we should all appreciate that, because there will be no other locomotive that'll bring any rail fan together than the Flying Scotsman. Happy 100th birthday, you handsome Gresley A3U.